I spent weeks pretending I didn't feel what I felt, folding each emotion like a fragile note I didn't want anyone to read. I told myself it was nothing, that I was just tired, just distracted, just carrying too many small worries and too few pockets. But the truth kept returning in the quiet moments, in the pause before replying, in the heaviness of late evenings, in the way memories turn sharp when I wasn't ready for them. I wanted to stay composed, to keep my voice steady and my heart still, the way strong people do in stories I don't belong in. But there are limits to how long you can hold your breath before the body reminds you it was built for air. So here it is, the feeling I tried so hard not to feel. I cared more than I meant to, more than I said, more than I admitted even to myself. You won't hear this from me, not out loud, but I hope somewhere you felt the slight tremble in the way I held your name. I hope you knew before I did. There was a moment small enough to miss. If you weren't paying attention when I almost said something I had been holding for weeks, you looked at me like you were waiting for a thought to arrive. So I breathed and let the sentence form, and then watched it fade before it ever reached the air. It wasn't fear exactly, just the sense that speaking it out loud would make everything too real too quickly. And I wasn't sure if either of us was ready for something that clear. So instead, I commented on the weather, asked about your day, chose a softer conversation because that's what we always choose when something heavier lingers. Later, walking home, I felt the words settle back into the familiar place where I keep things I don't know how to share. It wasn't regret, not entirely. to you. There were days when I noticed I was leaning a little too far and carrying small conversations, waiting for replies that didn't feel late but didn't feel present either. It wasn't your fault, people care differently. Some offer everything at once, some hold their warmth like something fragile, afraid it might spill. I kept trying to make it feel even, adjusting my steps, softening my questions, telling myself it was time and habit, or me reading too closely into the quiet. But carrying alone can feel like lifting something that doesn't look heavy, yet grows weightier each time you pick it up. You weren't unkind, just distant in a way that didn't leave much room for me to stay balanced. So I'm putting the weight down, not out of anger, just honesty. My hands are tired and it's hard to hold something that keeps shifting away. Maybe this is how things end, not dramatically, but softly, when one side keeps carrying what was meant to be shared. I keep wondering what would have changed if I had spoken earlier, before the distance grew stiff and the air between us settled into something colder than silence. There were moments, so many of them, when the truth rose in my throat, only to collapse under the weight of hesitation. I told myself you already knew that feelings don't need words to find their way, but I was wrong. Silence has a way of rewriting everything. Maybe you thought I didn't care, maybe you thought I grew bored or cautious or distracted. The truth is simpler. I was scared not of losing you, but of what it would mean to want something I couldn't control. If I had said it sooner, maybe we would have stayed or fallen apart faster, found a middle ground that didn't require so much guessing. But this is the part of life no one warns you about, how timing becomes a character, how regret grows quietly, how honesty arrives late and asks you to carry it anyway. I can't undo the silence, I can only hope you heard the words I couldn't say. And in the way I lingered, or in the way I softened, in the way I looked I started noticing small things. The way your voice didn't warm the same way it used to. How your eyes drifted past me instead of toward me. How the room felt dimmer even when the light stayed on. Nothing dramatic happened, that's the strange part. It was all subtle, almost polite, as if the distance wanted to arrive quietly, so neither of us would have to acknowledge it. I tried matching your calm, slowing my questions, keeping my tone, even pretending the shift was just a long day or a tired moment. But we both knew better. Some changes don't announce themselves. They show up as a pause, a shorter reply, a softness that doesn't reach the end of the sentence. Careful not to disturb whatever you were feeling or not feeling, because I wasn't sure which one it was. And maybe that's how I knew the light around us wasn't the same, even though nothing looked different at all. I don't know when it started, this feeling of running towards something I couldn't fully see. But every day with you made the distance feel shorter and the pace harder to control. There was a moment, a quick one, when your hand brushed mine and the world tilted just a little too sharply, as if everything I'd been avoiding was suddenly right in front of me. I tried to slow down, to remind myself that chasing something uncertain was how people got hurt, but the thought of not chasing it felt even worse, like missing a train you were meant to be on. You kept smiling at me with this quiet confidence, as if you knew exactly what kind of chaos I was in, as if you'd seen this version of me long before I realized it existed. And somehow your certainty made me braver. I felt myself moving faster, not because I wasn't afraid, but because for once fear wasn't enough to stop me. I still don't know where any of this leads or what happens when the momentum slows, but right now I just wanna keep running toward you, toward whatever this is, toward the version of myself that finally stopped holding back. I kept a list of small things I meant to tell you someday. Nothing important, just pieces of ordinary days that somehow felt lighter because you were in them. A joke I heard on the way home, a song that reminded me of nothing but still made sense to share, a thought that drifted in while I waited for the kettle to boil. I saved them, thinking I'd find the right time to say them out loud. But time kept moving in a way that didn't leave space for anything that quietly hopeful. Your messages grew shorter, my drafts grew longer, and the list stayed unfinished in the corner of my phone, like a conversation waiting for someone who'd already stepped back. I don't think you'll ever hear them, not because they're heavy, but because they only mattered in the version of us we didn't hold on to. Still, when my day feels too quiet, I read them again, not to remember you, but to remember how I used to feel when sharing small things felt possible. I used to think I needed grand moments to feel alive. Big choices, loud declarations, something worth remembering. But lately I've been learning how much small things matter. A room that doesn't rush me, a morning that doesn't hurt, a message from someone who doesn't ask me to shrink, a quiet walk where my thoughts finally match my footsteps. I never knew how badly I needed gentleness until I found myself craving kind of peace that doesn't demand performance. You taught me some of that even without meaning to. Your absence left space for parts of me I had forgotten, the ones that breathe slowly, the ones that stay. Collecting moments now, not beautiful, not grand, just honest. Things I didn't know I needed, like knowing when to let go, like choosing myself softly, like finding daylight even on an ordinary afternoon. Even on an ordinary afternoon, even on an ordinary afternoon. this is growing, or maybe it's just remembering who I was supposed to be before life got loud. I noticed the quiet first, not the kind that fills a room, but the kind a person leaves behind when they slowly step out of it. Your messages grew shorter, your laughter lighter, as if you were trying not to leave too much of yourself where I could reach it. I didn't ask why. We had always talked around things, never through them. So I followed the familiar pattern, giving you space while pretending I didn't feel the space growing. Evenings stretch long. I noticed the quiet first, not the kind that fills a room, but the kind a person leaves behind when they slowly step out of it. Your messages grew shorter, your laughter lighter, as if you were trying not to leave too much of yourself where I could reach it. I didn't ask why. We had always talked around things, never through them. So I followed the familiar pattern, giving you space while pretending I didn't feel the space growing. Evenings stretched longer, and the room felt different, like an outline of something that used to sit beside me. I replayed old conversations, not to find meaning, just to remember the sound of how things were before the quiet settled. I don't blame you. Some distance arrives without anyone choosing it, the way dusk arrives even when the day wasn't done. Still, I catch myself listening for the version of you that used to reach back quicker, the one who filled the quiet instead of creating it. Maybe it's just how things shift, not with a goodbye, but with a soft fading, where no one is at fault, yet something is missing all the same. I'll walk first. You didn't break apart. So much is loose in our grip, like two people holding a rope without noticing their hands slowly drifting away. I kept trying to name the feeling, but it never stayed still long enough. Some days it felt like missing you. Other days it felt like relief. And most days it was just something quiet that lived between my ribs. So I made the choice neither of us wanted to say. I stepped forward first, hoping you wouldn't take it as running. Sometimes walking away is the softest way to stay kind. I still think of you when the sky looks undecided, when the world feels almost warm, but not quite. You live in the half moments, the nearly meanings. If we ever meet again, I hope we can smile about this, about how two people can drift apart without being wrong for each other. And if you don't look back, it's okay. I already learned to walk forward, one small, steady step at a time. I used to think leaving was a single moment, a door closing, a final message, a clean edge I could point to. But the truth is quieter than that. People leave in small ways, in the pauses that stretch a bit too long, in the replies that shrink to a few polite words, in the way their laughter stops matching mine. No one ever announces it, they just fade like handwriting rubbed by time. Still there if you squint, gone if you blink. I watched you disappear gently, almost respectfully, as if you didn't want to disturb the version of me you used to care about. And I let it happen, not out of pride, but because I didn't know how to stop what neither of us started. Some endings are too soft to notice until they're over, until you wake one day and realize the space beside you hasn't been filled in weeks. I'm learning not to hold it against anyone. We all slip away from something quietly, hoping someone won't take it personally. I didn't, I don't, but I miss the days when your presence innocence felt certain before life taught me that disappearance can be gentle too. There are words I never said that still follow me around, quiet as dust on shelves I'm too tired to clean. I rehearse them sometimes, not because I want another chance, but because I wonder what shape they might have taken if I had been brave a little earlier. You and I spoke in half-finished thoughts, sending each other signals we pretended not to see. It wasn't dishonesty, just two people avoiding the echo of what we already knew. We were slipping out of the same story. Some nights I replay the almost conversations, the ones that hovered on my tongue before dissolving into a nod, a shrug, a softened smile. I guess letting go doesn't always look like walking away. Sometimes it looks like silence hanging between two people who cared enough not to break each other. And yet here I am, carrying the weight of words I never spoke, holding them gently as if they still matter. Maybe they do. Maybe some things stay, not because they were important, but because they were almost said. And almost is its own kind of memory. We didn't end with a fight. No raised voices, no dramatic lines worth quoting. Just a quiet room that felt suddenly too large. I remember the way the air shifted, how your eyes drifted to the floor as if searching for a version of us that still made sense. I wanted to say something, anything to hold the moment still, but all the words I could think of felt too small to stop what was already unraveling. Silence does strange things, it makes the truth louder, fills the space with everything we tried not to admit. I think that was the moment I understood we cared, but not enough in the same direction. So the room went quiet and neither of us tried to bring it back to life. Not out of coldness, but out of honesty. Some stories end softly, without breaking, without blame. Just two people realizing that staying would be the real wound. I left the room first, but the quiet followed me home. I guess this is the part where I say it out loud. You've been quietly removed from my life. No ceremony, no final conversation, and just a small click in my mind, like a switch that decides this is not for me. There are moments when a person feels slightly misaligned with your world. Not bad, not cruel, just not the right texture for your days. People call it a red flag now, a soft warning that hums in the background. My AI friend explained it like a textbook, and I laughed because it made me sound more dramatic than I am. But maybe it's true. Maybe my radar is a little too sharp. So I started writing down the signals, not to judge anyone, but to listen to the strange shape of my own boundaries. Like the people who don't say hello back, a simple greeting tossed into the air that falls straight to the floor. A small sticker rolls out in my mind, bright red, whispering careful. Or the sound people make when they eat, the way it pulls me back into that old memory. A soldier broadcast in every chew, like the whole world asked for it. Since then, the volume knob inside me learned how to mute itself, sometimes too easily. Then there are the skipped courtesies, the little selfish gestures, pulling shared dishes closer, playing with chopsticks like a trick. Harmless, maybe, but my soul still flinches at the thought. And the people who shrink themselves again and again, as if they're rehearsing their own failures. I can't, I won't, I'm not made for that. It makes the air around them like I'm watching someone argue with their own shadow. Spelling mistakes proudly defended, celebrity gossip treated like scripture. People who know strangers better than they know their friends. I used to think these things were about them, but maybe they're about me. My patience, my boundaries, my too sensitive radar. Because if I'm honest, I know I've been someone's red flag too. Someone's quiet disappointment, someone's small annoyance, a person they quietly stepped away from. So I write these thoughts, not to accuse anyone, but to remind myself to be softer, to leave room for mistakes, mine and theirs. This world is wide, but we still bump into each other constantly. I hope the things that bother me never become wounds for someone else, and I hope someone's red flag somewhere out there will feel like a red carpet to me, a sign that I've finally found the right place to stand. So tell me, what are your red signals? I'm asking gently, ready to listen, and maybe ready
ready to change a little too.
Some days I surprise myself with the tiny rules I keep, the ones no one else knows about. The way I hate loud chewing, or how a missing greeting can tilt my whole mood by a few degrees. I used to think these things made me difficult, a person with too many edges and not enough patience. But now I see them for what they are, small things I protect, because life already asks for so much softness. I remember dinners where the room felt too close, where every sound felt like it had teeth. I learned to choose seats with care, not for comfort but for survival of my sanity. Funny how we grow around noise we never agreed to live with. People say we should be less sensitive, but maybe sensitivity is just another word for listening closely to the air, to the moment, to the small signals that say this isn't right for you. And I'm learning slowly that I'm allowed to listen. I'm allowed to leave a table that feels too loud, a conversation that feels unkind, a person who forgets how to hold the simplest grace. These are the small things I protect, and maybe that's enough to keep a little peace inside me, even on the days I feel like too much. Soft apartment light. Some afternoons feel like they're holding their breath, waiting for someone to notice them. Mine usually pass in silence, just me and the dust floating through the room like tiny heart's too shy to lend. You used to fill these hours, not with anything loud, just the kind of presence that makes the air feel easier. But people leave in ways that don't involve doors. One day your shoes were still here, the next your voice felt like a memory I borrowed from someone else. I sit by the window, pretending the light is enough. And maybe it is on days when the world feels gentle. I'm not grieving you, not exactly. I'm grieving the version of myself who thought some stories were too small to end. But life keeps stretching forward, soft and uneven, and I keep finding reasons to stay in this room a little longer, even if it's just the sunlight being kind to me today. I used to think boundaries were walls I built too high, a sign I was shutting people out. But lately I've learned they're more like quiet lines in the sand, easy to cross if you don't look, easy to keep if you finally care. There were people who took more than I offered, tiny bits at a time, until I felt myself shrinking, even while smiling politely. It confused me how kindness could feel so heavy. Something I can keep giving away. It's not anger, it's not revenge, it's simply choosing myself in a world that forgets is how much that matters. A quiet kind of boundary. That's all it is. But it feels like finally breathing after sitting in a room that was slightly too warm for slightly too long. There was a version of me you once knew well, the one who hid her doubts behind jokes at the wrong time, the one who said she was fine even when her voice wavered. I didn't mean a lie, I just didn't know how to be honest without unraveling in your hands. You like the easier version of me, the girl who bent herself into shapes that made you comfortable. And maybe I liked her too, because she made things simple even when the simplicity hurt. But people change quietly, like seasons slipping across windows, subtle at first, then suddenly undeniable. I've grown into someone who doesn't apologize for needing softness, for drawing gentle lines, for taking up more space than she once believed she deserved. Would you recognize me now? Would you still reach for me? Or miss the version of me who never asked for anything? Sometimes I miss her too, but not enough to go back. I hope the memory of who I was sits kindly in your mind, even as I become someone new. I woke to a message I never opened, just your name glowing on the screen, fading like steam on a window. It wasn't heartbreak, not the kind that demands a song, just a small truth settling into place. We stopped reaching for the same things. I made coffee, watched it swirl like the last words we never said out loud. I wasn't sad, but the morning felt slightly tilted, as if I had slept too close to an old version of myself. Maybe growing up is just answering fewer calls, leaving unread emotions where they fall, learning to forgive the quiet between two people drifting apart. Today I'm lighter, not because I'm over you, but because I'm finally learning that not every goodbye needs an audience. my small confession. I hope your days fit you better now. And if your name lights up my phone again, I'll smile, even if I let it fade with the rest of the morning light. Distance teaches things we don't ask to learn. How someone's voice can fade without disappearing. How silence becomes familiar when you hear it often enough. I used to think closeness was about time spent, words exchanged, small routine shared. But now I see it's something quieter, the way someone stays in your mind, even when they no longer stay in your days. You drifted outward, not abruptly, just slowly enough that I couldn't point to the moment it happened. I kept reaching out with questions, but with habits, sending small updates, sharing pieces of my day, hoping they'd land somewhere near you. Most of them didn't, and that's okay. Distance does what it does, it gives clarity to what was held loosely. I'm learning not to chase what's already walking away, learning to hold myself a little steadier in the space you left. It doesn't hurt like it used to, it just feels honest now. The kind of truth you grow into. I didn't mean to fall this fast. I told myself to keep things steady, to take small steps, to breathe before reacting, but that lasted maybe a day, maybe less. The way you said my name changed something, a tiny shift, barely noticeable, but enough to make the ground feel unsteady beneath the usual routine of my thoughts. Every time you laugh, something in my chest jumped forward like it was trying to reach you before I could stop it. It felt reckless, like running downhill too quickly. Fun until you realize you can't slow down. I kept pretending I was fine, that my hands weren't shaking when yours brushed mine, that my voice didn't just a little closer. But the truth is, I didn't know what to do with this, with how suddenly everything felt louder, brighter, impossible to ignore. Part of me wanted to step back to protect the version of myself that doesn't break easily, but the rest of me leans in despite knowing I might not be ready for how much this could hurt. And maybe that's what scares me, not the feeling itself, but how much of me you've managed to reach without even trying. I felt it happening long before I said anything. That quiet burn at the edges, the kind that starts small but spreads faster every time you breathe near it. You kept talking about nothing, but your smile stayed just a little too long, and suddenly everything felt louder. The room, my pulse, the thought of what would happen if I took one more step closer. I told myself to calm down, act like I'd been here before, but I hadn't. Not like this, not with this strange mix of fear and wanting. It felt reckless to stay, but impossible to leave. And I hate how easily you make me contradict myself, how one look can undo hours of convincing. Sometimes I think I'm only pretending to be older, more stable, less breakable than I really am. But around you, I feel young in a way that scares me, as if the whole world is about to tilt, and I'm the one who pushed it. I thought I had time to understand what I was feeling, time to decide if I wanted it, time to keep everything neatly contained, where it couldn't shake me. But life doesn't wait for people who hesitate, and somewhere between your half smile and the way you said my name tonight, everything I've been holding back pushed forward all at once. It felt like a door I didn't open, just swung wide on its own, letting in all the light, all the fear, all the possibility I wasn't ready to name. My breath caught, my hands trembled, and suddenly I was honest in ways I had no intention of being. Every feeling I tried to quiet rose up loud and demanding, as if they've been waiting for the smallest invitation to break loose. And you looked at me with a softness that hurt, as if you've been waiting to, as if none of this surprised you, as if first time. I didn't try to stop it, I let the moment take me. However unprepared I was, because some feelings don't wait for permission. I knew it wasn't the right moment, but something in me pushed forward anyway. Like a step taken too quickly on a street I didn't mean to turn onto. You looked at me as if you already knew I wasn't deeper than I admitted. And maybe I had been slipping long before I ever said a word. I tried to slow down, but everything kept happening faster. Your voice, your eyes, the way the night felt warmer than it should have. I kept pretending I wasn't choosing anything, that things were just unfolding. But choices happen quietly, and suddenly you're standing somewhere you swore you'd never be. I don't regret it, not yet, but I can already feel the pull. That mix of wanting something too much and knowing it might undo me. Still, I didn't turn back. Maybe I couldn't, maybe I didn't want to. We used to move in quiet patterns, your steps and mine, finding the same rhythm without either of us trying. But lately I noticed the space in changing. Your pace drifted ahead, mine slowed down, and the distance widened in a way we both pretended not to see. It wasn't dramatic, just a gradual shift, like clothes that stop fitting. Though you haven't changed all that much, I kept adjusting, shortening my thoughts, choosing lighter words, hoping the familiar rhythm would return on its own. But patterns outgrow us the same way we outgrow them, quietly, without bitterness, leaving behind a shape that once made sense. I'm not angry, just aware that the version of us I miss is one we passed without noticing. And now, when we talk, I hear the difference, not in what you say, but in the spaces you no longer fill. I didn't notice it at first, the way my steps began to shift. Our conversations felt lighter, how the air changed around you, as if it had been waiting for me to finally pay attention. It happened slowly, then all at once. A single moment, a small glance, your hand brushing mine, just long enough for my heartbeat to forget its rhythm. And suddenly I was leaning too far forward, caught in a feeling I wasn't prepared to hold up. I kept trying to steady myself, telling my thoughts to slow down, telling my breath not to give anything away. But the more I tried, the more obvious it became. I wasn't standing where I used to. Every word you spoke pulled me in a little more, like gravity shifting toward a center I didn't know I wanted. And I hated how much I wanted it, the closeness, the uncertainty, the thrill of not knowing what might happen if I kept letting myself fall. I tried pretending the world wasn't tilting, that I wasn't already imagining what it would feel like to take another step towards you. But the truth is I felt it the moment it happened, the exact point where my balance slipped, where your voice filled a space in me I didn't know was waiting, where something small and quiet became too big to ignore. Now I'm here, caught between fear and wanting, half hoping you'll reach out, half terrified that you will, because one more touch from you might push me past the point of pretending I'm still in control. We kept circling around the truth, as if saying it out loud would make the night too real, too sharp, too impossible to take back. Your eyes kept drifting to me, then away, then back again. And every time my chest tightened like it already knew what neither of us would say. We talked about small things, music, the weather, places we wanted to visit, but the air between us felt heavier than the words, thick with something we weren't ready to touch. The streetlights flickered, cars passed slowly, and we stood there pretending not to understand what the moment wanted from us. Maybe it was fear, maybe timing, maybe both. But when you laughed softly and looked at me just a second too long, I thought, this is it, this is where everything changes. And still, we said nothing. Walked home feeling like I'd left a version of myself in the space beside you, one braver, one who would have spoken. But tonight, silence felt safer than the truth we almost touched. I used to think endings would sound like break but ours arrived softly, like a door closing without making a sound. There wasn't a fight or a moment to point at, just a gradual quiet that settled between us, growing familiar before either of us realized what it meant. I kept wondering if we should have tried harder, spoken earlier, held on a little longer. But the truth is, we were already letting go, just gently enough to mistake it for patience. Now, when I think of you, there's no way, just a faint outline of the time we shared, fading the way sunlight fades, without anyone noticing the exact moment it dims. I'm not holding on, but I'm not erasing anything either. Some things stay even after they're over, not as longing, but as a quiet reminder of who we were before the distance found us. And in that quiet, I finally feel the softest kind of ending, the kind that doesn't break, just rests. I try to act normal around you, try to keep my voice steady and my eyes from giving away the parts of myself I wasn't ready to share. But every time you looked at me with that soft curiosity, I felt something slip, a glance too long, a smile too quick, a silence that revealed more than anything I could have said. I kept telling myself that I should stay in control, that wanting someone this much was a dangerous thing. But wanting and pretending don't seem to belong in the same sentence. There were moments I almost confessed everything, like when you asked if I was okay, and I nearly said, no, not really, not when you're this close. Instead, I swallowed the words, let them burn their way down, hoping you wouldn't notice how much effort it took to keep them inside. But you didn't notice, I saw it in the way you paused, the way your expression softened, as if you already knew what I was trying so hard to hide. And maybe that's why I kept stumbling around my feelings, because it becomes impossible when someone finally sees you without you having to ask. You stood a little too close tonight, close enough for my breath. close enough for every practice thought to scatter like it was never there. I tried to form a sentence, something casual, something safe, but your presence pressed against me in a way that made language feel like a task far beyond my ability. Your eyes kept catching mine, not intentionally, but often enough to make my pulse slip into a rhythm that didn't belong to me anymore. I remember laughing at something you said, not because it was funny, but because I didn't know how else to release the pressure building under my skin. The whole time I kept thinking I should step back just a little, just enough to think straight, to breathe evenly, to act like someone who knows how to regulate their heart. But I didn't move, not because I was brave, but because something in me refused to let go of the closeness, terrified that if I stepped away, the moment would break and I'd never find my way back to it. I told myself I was fine, that this wasn't as intense as it felt, that wanting you this much didn't make me foolish. But even now, hours later, my thoughts are still tangled, my hands still unsteady, my mind replaying every glance we exchanged, like I'm afraid I missed something important. And maybe I did, or maybe the truth is simpler. I was too close to think straight, too full of wanting, too young to pretend I could handle it gracefully.